Did you know that Jesus and Muhammad are actually part of the same spiritual family tree, and that their followers once shared cities, schools, and even hospitals? Sounds wild, right? Not really. There was a time when Christians and Muslims lived as brothers, but kings, the rich, and later politicians saw they could make money by dividing the believers. We'll uncover the battles they fought against each other and the moments they stood side by side. In this video, we'll try to shine some light on how the elites sowed discord and hatred between peaceful believers, and all of it for profit. Let's discuss it in today's episode of Light's History. Let's rewind the religious clock all the way back to the 1st century. Before Instagram, before electricity, even before pizza delivery. That's when Christianity made its entrance. Its founder, Jesus of Nazareth, also known as Jesus Christ, who was not only Jewish but also a revolutionary spiritual influencer of his time. Imagine a guy preaching love, forgiveness, and turning the other cheek in a world where the Roman Empire was all about swords and sandals. His core message was simple but radical: love your neighbor, forgive your enemies, and keep your eyes on the kingdom of God. Basically, divine real estate with zero property tax. But the story took a dramatic turn. Jesus was crucified by the Romans, which, let's be honest, would have been a PR nightmare for most movements. Instead, it sparked something huge. His disciples went full missionary mode, spreading his message from Jerusalem to Rome faster than you can say New Testament. By the 4th century, just around 300 years later, Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. That's like a startup going IPO in 3 centuries. Not bad for 12 guys and a message about love. About 6 centuries later, we're in Mecca, 610 CE. A man named Muhammad starts receiving revelations in a cave, like a spiritual download from the cloud. He declares that he's the final prophet in a long line that includes Abraham, Moses, and, yep, Jesus. Islam was born, and it's got a holy book, the Quran, that directly names Jesus, or Isa, as one of the most important prophets. And Mary? She gets more verses in the Quran than in the entire New Testament. Talk about a rebrand. But Islam wasn't just a faith. It quickly grew into a movement that united tribes, built empires, and launched a civilization that would eventually stretch from Spain to Indonesia. While Christianity had Rome, Islam had the caliphates, one spread with sandals, the other with trade routes and serious scholarship. In reality, Christianity and Islam actually have a surprising amount in common. Both are monotheistic. Yep, just one God, no divine entourage. They both trace their roots to Abraham, the original spiritual patriarch who probably didn't realize he'd end up in the middle of 2 of the world's biggest religions. They believe in Judgment Day, basically the ultimate cosmic report card. They've both got sacred texts. Christians have the Bible, Muslims have the Quran, and both are packed with prophets: Moses, Noah, and yes, even Jesus. In Christianity, he's the Son of God. In Islam, he's a revered prophet born of the Virgin Mary, who, by the way, gets a whole chapter in the Quran. Oh, and both religions are big on kindness, charity, and helping the poor. Islam even calls Christians people of the book, which is basically spiritual bestie status in scriptural terms. So in the beginning, Christianity and Islam were like spiritual cousins. Same Abrahamic family, just a few centuries and theological debates apart. But the drama was just getting started. Before we move on to the next section, please don't forget to subscribe if you liked the video so far. So here's where things got, well, less friendly. For a while, Christians and Muslims weren't just swapping spiritual texts, they were swapping swords. Enter the Crusades, a medieval saga of holy drama from the 11th to 13th centuries. The idea: Western European Christians wanted to liberate Jerusalem from Muslim control, but liberate in this context came with a side of extreme violence. In 1099, the First Crusade led to the capture of Jerusalem, and it was brutal. Muslim and Jewish residents were massacred. It was less peace on earth and more Game of Thrones Holy Land edition. Now, Muslims weren't exactly thrilled with the new management. Enter Saladin, the Sultan who basically said, "Okay, enough of this." In 1187, He united a fractured Muslim world, rolled into Jerusalem, and took it back. But unlike the earlier Christian conquest, Saladin didn't go full scorched earth. He actually spared Christian lives and allowed pilgrimages to continue. Imagine retaking a city and saying, "You can still visit, just don't touch anything." That's diplomacy with a sword. But wait, Europe wasn't done. Across the Mediterranean, something epic and long was brewing in Spain. Muslims, known in Europe as Moors, had ruled the Iberian Peninsula since 711 CE. That's right, Muslim rule in Spain lasted about 700 years. They brought architecture, science, libraries, and algebra, which some students still haven't forgiven them for. Cities like Cordoba were thriving centers of culture and learning, while much of Europe was still figuring out indoor plumbing. Then came the Reconquista, Spain's very slow-motion eviction notice. Over centuries, Christian kingdoms in the north began pushing south, reclaiming territory bit by bit. It was like the world's longest comeback tour. By 1492, yes, the same year Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the last Muslim stronghold of Granada fell to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And that was it. 700 years of Muslim presence in Spain, gone. Well, mostly. You can still see it in the architecture, the language, and honestly, in the tapas. So yeah, while the message was God is love, the Middle Ages were more like God is love, but also prepare for battle. So the fighting stopped in the Middle Ages, right? Yeah, but it didn't. By the 16th century, the Crusades were ancient history, but nobody told the Ottomans or the Europeans, because they basically picked up where the medieval drama left off, just with fancier hats and bigger cannons. The Ottoman Empire became the heavyweight champ of the Muslim world, while the Holy Roman Empire tried to rally Christian Europe like a disorganized medieval Avengers. They clashed over everything from Vienna, which the Ottomans famously tried to siege twice, in 1529 and again in 1683, to the Balkans and the Mediterranean, where naval battles were less Pirates of the Caribbean and more who controls the spice route. Fast forward to the 20th century and things got messy. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed like a flan in a cupboard, and European powers rushed in like they'd just found the last piece of baklava. Britain and France carved up the Middle East with colonial rulers, maps, and zero regard for, actual people living there. Then in 1948, the creation of Israel added a whole new level of tension, especially for Palestinians, whose land was suddenly part of a decades-long geopolitical tug-of-war. And here's the kicker. While religion kept being used as a banner, most of these conflicts were really about land, oil, and power. Faith often played the role of the scapegoat, while political leaders made moves like chess masters, just with tanks instead of pawns. So while the headlines screamed holy war, the fine print often read follow the money. In all those centuries of conflict, there were short periods of cooperation and friendship between the two religions. Want to understand the world better? Start with history and subscribe to our channel. Believe it or not, the history of Islam and Christianity isn't just one long season of holy wars, the series. There were actually some highlight reels of peace, cooperation, and, dare we say, friendship. For example, in 10th century Cordoba, Spain, the Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people didn't just coexist, they co-thrived. Think of it as a medieval TED Talk conference with minarets. Scholars worked side by side, translating texts, debating philosophy, inventing algebra, thanks for that by the way, and creating some of the most beautiful architecture on the planet. If Instagram existed back then, the Great Mosque of Cordoba would have broken the internet. And then you've got Saladin and Richard the Lionheart. These two were basically enemies in a very intense long-distance relationship. They fought during the Crusades, yes, but they also exchanged gifts, treated each other's wounded soldiers, and even negotiated like seasoned diplomats. It was less mortal enemies and more frenemies with swords. In modern times, the cooperation hasn't stopped. There have been thousands of interfaith dialogues around the world. Think of them as global coffee chats for peace. Christians have built schools and hospitals in Muslim-majority countries. Muslim organizations have helped Christian refugees fleeing war zones. And let's not forget the Pope hanging out with imams, promoting peace and tolerance like the world's holiest buddy movie. So no, it hasn't always been fire and brimstone. Sometimes, It's been charity drives and shared hummus. So while the rich, the kings, or the politicians tried to divide the world, every day, believers pray for peace. Do you think Christians and Muslims will ever see eye to eye, or will they remain separated for thousands of years? Let us know in the comments below. Here's another video history buffs enjoyed watching. Bye for now.